Recording in progress.
All right, welcome everyone to the Design Review and Tree Board meeting of May 28th. Can we get a roll call, please, John?
Yes. Christine Lovell,
Here.
Lynn Diedler, Carrie Bush,
Here.
Vice Chair Melissa Henley,
Here.
Chair Lars Langberg,
Here.
and Marshall Boff as alternate. Okay, we have all members in attendance.
Great, thank you. We have some minutes to approve from the meeting of April 23rd. Anybody have any comments or questions on the minutes? Seeing none, could we get a motion on that? Somebody like to put forth a motion?
Sure, I'll put a motion to approve the minutes as, I guess, recorded.
All right, have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Can we just do that? John's not here. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the minutes are approved. Next on the agenda, are comments from the public regarding items not on the agenda. And just hit your little.
Yes, I left some papers on the ground outside for
them.
a meeting
Okay.
here.
We can pause. And we're waiting for John as well. So brief pause in the meeting. I guess I can ask, are there anybody in the public here to comment on items not on the agenda? Okay. All right. Well, you can wait till the board, Lynn comes back. So just give us a minute. Not out there? Please, yes. And you can tell us your name and. Can you make sure can you make sure the light is on your microphone there?
There, thank you, yeah.
Great, thank you.
So my name is Chris Burkhart, and I've lived in the area since 2011, but I've been coming up here with my parents since around 1965 and living in West Marin. Let's see, what are these? I just wanted to say something in general now concerning the state housing mandate. And my experience in trying to submit an article for our local papers, and what I experienced with the 3 local papers, I noticed that learning about the history of Santa Rosa since around 1960, a major portion of the most magnificent buildings have been torn down, like the courthouse and the library and so forth. So I was really pleased to see that this building was still there up on Chan 8 across from Administration Drive. When I went up there in 2018 and 2019, this historic hospital from 1936. Right here, a little. And so that's about 1 mile up Chan 8, across from Administration Drive is where Chan 8 goes up. And
30 seconds.
And then there's this other facility, the former tuberculosis clinic across the street from it from 1939. And I tried for like half a year. I tried to submit articles. I didn't have it all on a computer file. I went and retyped it all, and I put the pictures on computer file. And I tried with all three.
2 minutes are up.
The Press Democrat, also with its Gazette, which is actually owned by the Press Democrat, but I think it's made in a tricky way so that people don't notice that if they don't read that. And also the Bohemian. I got nowhere. They seem to be really discriminatory submitting their articles, selecting their articles. So primary, I mean, they're to fool people. Of course, they're going to have a few that have a different opinion, but predominantly, it is very, very difficult. They really make it difficult for anybody who wants to oppose the state housing mandate or anything. And I just want to say those are the conditions we have to work under, and it's just not fair at all, because we don't have any other local papers. I mean, if you could find some tiny little paper, hardly anybody would read it, but they have full control over it. And I think there's something suspicious about the Bohemian as well, because I got nowhere with them either. And it was also, there was one more.
Chris, your 2 minutes is up. Thank you for your time.
There was also the Bennett Valley Senior Center, which already got torn down in the meantime, which is south of Highway 12. And I thought that could have been saved too. And I was suggesting something to save an existing building for reuse, which is actually respecting the building industry. But it's an industry which has become so terrible that it destroys its own accomplishments, which I think is a common phenomenon when something reaches catastrophic proportions. That they don't even consider these beautiful buildings.
Thank you thanks for your comments, Chris. Do we have anybody else in the audience who would like to speak on items not on the agenda today? Anybody on Zoom? Susie, is there anybody else? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, good. Anyway, I'm in total agreement with the previous speaker, although I couldn't hear half of what he was saying about the press Democrat and then the press not letting the public know what's going on, like in your meetings and also the city council meetings. So anyway, that's why you probably don't know anything about the fiscal and physical crisis that we have here in Sebastopol, because nobody's telling you, and you're not paying attention to what's going on in city council. So anyway, we have a real crisis here in Sebastopol, and it just came out on April 23rd with manager's report talking about there's another $1 million that has disappeared from the wastewater fund, and nobody knows where it went, and nobody seems to want to find out. And there's also, we need a new water well, and the cost for that is anticipated up to $4 million, which we don't have. We've got an antiquated infrastructure. The water pipes, sewer pipes need to be replaced. Subsequently, and we don't have money for it, the water and sewage rates may double. And that means like $200, I understand, for a lot of people a month. So anyway, the manager is projecting.
30 seconds.
So anyway, what I basically, until you find out what's going on, I urge you to delay any more decisions about building, because this is just it's not sustainable. We cannot support all the we don't have the infrastructure for the building that you all have approved and are going to approve. So please don't
2 minutes
delay it for information. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else out there in the Zoom world, Susie? No? Okay. All right. So we'll move on. Any statements of conflicts of interest from the board today? Nope. All right, then we'll go to our regular agenda. We've got 2 items on the agenda today. First one, the Canopy project on Gravenstein Highway North. John, you want to give us a little intro?
Sure. Yes. So this is the Canopy project, which is at 1009, 1011 Gravenstein Highway North. This is a continuation from the April 23rd Design Review Board meeting. At that meeting, the board heard a staff report, presentation from the applicant, and public comment. The board started deliberations on this project, but were unable to come to a final decision and thus continued that meeting. The board discussed components of the project that fall within the purview of the Design Review Board, including design, building mass, open space, fencing, solar, and landscaping. The board started the conversation about tree removals and having difficulties reading the proposed plan set. Since then, the applicant has provided a revised set that handles that issue. The other components were proposed colors. The applicant has provided a updated color palette. There's also a color board here in person. If the board wishes to see that, we can show that to everybody. And there were some additional items being revised in the project plans, sheet A3 and A33. These include pathways and their locations around trees. The applicant did want to note that during site construction, these pathways may change in relation to when they start doing their site work to save as many trees as possible. So the pathway on your project plan set might alter a little bit from what is kind of at the completion state. So it was hard to implement that into the plan set today, but just knowing that those routes could change, not dramatically, that would be something that probably would have to come back to the board or staff to be look at, but some minor modifications through the construction phase. The other component of it was with these revisions, the applicant was able to reduce the number of tree removals from 29 to 25, and the arborist will work with the contractor and engineering team during the construction to ensure the health and safety of those trees. Lastly, there was a condition of approval that was brought up about the HOA being required to ensure that the fruit trees planted on site were at the responsibility of the HOA at no cost to the city. That's included in the Exhibit B, conditions of approval. And the last component of it is this project was submitted under SB 330 and is subject to state law that protects the project from being subject to more than 5 public hearings. This is the 5th and final hearing for this project, so a decision must be made this evening. With that, I will conclude my staff report and make myself available for any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, John. Any questions from the board for staff? Lynn, make sure you turn on your mic and go for it.
Yeah, as of this time, we have not seen any of the colors for this, or I have not, and I couldn't find them in the packet. But what if we can't decide on a color, or how, something like that? And there's a couple other issues that might run over or not get answered today. But you say this is the 5th and final. Is there any way you can solve problems later than this meeting?
To the board, my name is David Wolter, and I'm the interim planning director. And Mr. Diedler, I think that there is a way to handle that if you can give, as a board, clear direction to staff in terms of what you're looking for. Staff can follow up with the applicant and address your concerns as they may come up. Thank you.
Yeah, or we can approve with conditions, right? That's a kind of typical way to try to get clarification moving forward. No?
Correct, with clear clear understandings for staff so staff can implement your directive.
Right.
And back to Lynn's question, so sheets A28, 29, 30, on the submitted set that are a part of the package include the color schemes.
Right.
So they are in the design review packet.
Yeah, thank you. And David, welcome to our board meeting. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff?
I think I would benefit from clear direction on what is and isn't up for consideration by this board and what we are supposed to be opining on.
Yes, so the design aspects of the project, the landscaping component of the project, and the tree removal component of the project. Things like density, building height, location of buildings on site are not within the purview of the design review board.
So just to reiterate from the staff report, design, building mass, open space, fencing, solar, and landscaping.
Correct.
Okay.
Go a little bit further. But the stuff that is within our design review guidelines that the board has looked at over the years, those are the items that are within the purview of the.
Great, thank you. Christine?
Yes, I have a question. So I'm a little confused about these statements. So it says here in your document, as this project meets all the objective standards that were in place at the time of the preliminary application, any discussion about subjective standards, for example, colors, materials, articulation, window sizes, would be for discussion purposes only. And the applicant may choose whether to integrate these requests into the final project design.
Yeah, so that is in relation to colors are not necessarily a component that we either approve or deny our project on, but we can provide input, subjective input from the board to have the applicant look at those colors, and it's at their discretion if they want to use those or not. This applicant, the first go around, the majority of the buildings were white and a charcoal blue, kind of black color. They took the board's feedback in their first go around, have since changed those colors to kind of greens and browns to blend in with the environment of the natural wooded area or wooded component of the site. So it's not as stark and contrasting.
Okay, so that I understand this completely, we won't really be voting to deny or approve this project. We're merely giving suggestions as to colors and materials. So this seems to me to be one of those situations where we have at the beginning of some projects where we provide sort of recommendation and feedback, but we don't call for a vote for approval and denial.
You're still, there are design findings that are part of the Exhibit A findings of conditions of, or findings of approval, including the findings that need to be made for the tree removal component of this project. So there are findings that you're making about the project.
Okay, so, but the tree removal is tree board. So that's kind of a separate, we can hold that separate for the
Correct.
purposes of this discussion. So I think that to clarify, I would recommend that we vote narrowly on the specific findings of which we can vote. We're taking a vote on these colors, or we're taking a vote on this landscaping, because we don't have the opportunity to vote on the project overall as is stated in this per this Senate Bill 330. I guess, What I'm suggesting is we vote on the specific things clearly of which we do have a say so, yes or no. And if we don't, if it's just a recommendation, there's really no reason to do a vote on it because it doesn't have any meaning.
Board member, if I could, as I think you all know, state laws have changed in recent years. And with certain projects, there's a need to follow objective design and development standards. And I think your staff has made that very clear to you. It's a challenging area, particularly for design board, design group, no question about it. And there are gray areas. And I would suggest that in this case, it appears that the applicant has willingly made changes. And it would be helpful, I think, to go forward and basically recommend or support, maybe is a better word, the colors and materials if you so desire. So they clearly made changes. You have a willing applicant. I think you can indicate support for those areas that perhaps do not fall clearly into an objective standard. And maybe that's a way to handle.
And that's
this
exactly
matter.
what I'm saying.
And
So
I'm agreeing with you.
we don't vote, in the past, we've voted to approve a project broadly
Mhm.
or deny a project broadly, but we're not doing that here. I suggest that we vote, just as you said so eloquently, on these particular matters, and we're not voting then broadly on objective design standards that we have no say-so over.
I would tend to agree. I think maybe the idea would be to, in those areas that appear to be more subjective, to indicate, if you so desire, support for what's before you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Christine. Thank you, David. Any other questions of staff? Gary?
Yeah, there was a public notification delivered by staff this morning about public safety regarding the fence and accessibility to Hurlbut. I thought maybe if staff could help explain that to the public, and also be curious to know, would there be any particular means of maybe making Hurlbut pedestrian accessible in the future, if there's any plans for that?
Gotcha. So that component of it is not within the scope of this project. It is a county road, so it would have to come from the county as far as any pedestrian improvements there. I know that there was the ask about the kind of bicycle vestibule at that entrance or exit out of the site. I can't remember, we're still including that, but lowering the scale down a little bit, which would offer kind of a buffer between the exit of the site to the actual roadway, so that there is a safe space for pedestrians that are coming out either via bicycle or walking, to kind of safely find their way along Hurlbut Avenue, because yes, it is a county road that does not have any sidewalks or gutters or anything like that. So that component of it is still part of the project, but it was kind of scaled down a little bit, just to make sure that it still works. Does that answer your question? Okay.
A follow-up on that. Does this not having that gate and passageway from the development set up the city for a certain amount of liability? We can ask Larry. Because, children popping out onto Hurlbut, whatever. I mean, I do agree with what the the public member said about that being people traveling very quickly on that road, and there's really no escape off of the road to get out of the way of a vehicle without jumping in a ditch, basically. So, but in a way, by having that gate, we're inviting the exit. So that's a question.
I think you can talk about that as part of the project discussion. No, unless there's a liability question.
Well, that's my question, because it's an interesting situation we have here, because we're on the boundary of city and county, two different jurisdictions.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Larry, do you want to,
If you
do you
could
mind answering that
pop
real
up
quick?
there,
Thank
Larry.
you. And just to be, the vestibule component of it would be within the site itself,
Right.
not on the outside county property component. So
So I did not see the exchange of today that's being referenced, but I'm familiar with the site. So are you talking about the existing gate that's there behind the O'Reilly project that opens onto Hurlbut? Or are we talking about a different
There's a
component?
proposal in the design for it's been in the proposal, in the project already, to create access to Hurlbut with a kind of vestibule, so you're not just going through a fence right onto the road, but you're going through a little space before that.
But I just point out that there's already access onto Hurlbut, so I really doubt that there'd be any liability exposure to the city, regardless of what decisions you might make about that.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions for staff? Gary?
Will we have a chance to speak with our applicant again?
Yes,
Okay, great.
at least that's on my agenda, but yeah. Not right now. There'll be another opportunity. So first, any other questions for staff? Okay, then if the applicant would like to present, you can.
at this time,
Don't have to.
we're in deliberation component of it. So you guys already heard the staff report. I've provided you with the updates from.
Okay,
the
so then
proposal.
we can still ask questions of the applicant based on the updates that we've seen? No?
I believe so. If not, I can.
Or I
yeah.
guess we could ask those to staff, and if staff can answer them, maybe the applicant would be
Sure.
happy to, yeah. So, Carrie, would you like to?
I was just primarily regarding the tree report that's been updated and made more clear. Thanks, by the way. There were just a couple trees not indicated on the report. I thought I would just try to ask for greater clarification. There are a few. Do you want to just start by tree, or because let's see, we have probably about 5 or 6. So I just thought I'd try to be clear. I think there was the tree number 30 to start with. That was sort of the big one in question. And I didn't see that one listed on the tree legend.
As a tree to be removed?
Well, it was. I think it was in question in regards to if it's a tree bond, or there was also another tree in question in regards to parking. Yeah, thanks.
Sure. So a couple of things. One is our arborist, John Meserve, is here, so he can absolutely fill in other items if I don't have the technical myself. The tree exhibit that was added to the tree report, which shows the red and green, those are all of the heritage trees. So the tree report lists every tree, whether it's a heritage tree or not. So there may be some that are not ordinance size that are still on the report. A lot of those are still being preserved. The 2 yellow trees that we looked at the last meeting, I spoke with John and we kind of made an executive decision to just save them. So for the vestibule, we really worked closely. John went back out to the site, surveyed the canopy. We worked with our landscape architect to figure out how big it needed to be for a bicycle to safely and easily fit in there without weird maneuvering. And so that's why that yellow tree is gone. Similarly, the tree in the knuckle, we just rejiggered the parking. So you'll see in the updated plans that were submitted, certain pathways, big things have moved, and that's how we got the 29 removals proposed down to 25.
Number 56, is that the knuckle we're talking about there?
Yeah, that was the one.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's helpful. Yeah. Sorry, but just the number of trees that, say, for example, number 60, number 78, number 140, those just don't meet the requirements for removal.
So 140 would, it's just right in the middle of the street.
Okay, and I don't know if I'm missing a page, but I don't see 140 on our.
Oh, does it not go up to 1?
Right.
Okay, let me.
So it's 134 and then 1,000, and that's why I'm asking.
So I'm seeing it on page 11 of the arborist report, the Quercus calogi, which is proposed for a removal. So I can also give you the color-coded one, but it's,
Oh, you know what? Okay. Maybe I don't have the right one then. This was from Urban Forestry Associates.
oh,
That's the old-
okay, that's the city's arborist, and John, please correct
Yes,
me if I'm.
that's Ben Anderson's report. The one from John Meserve is the full tree inventory,
Okay.
which is, we
Sorry.
can probably go through it.
Please.
That's tricky.
That report that Ben Anderson produced, which is the one you're looking at, we've addressed each one of those items and clarified in the latest inventory that we provided. So that's all been taken care of.
And that latest one is the dated 5/8.
Say again?
The latest one is dated 5/8.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
And just to tack onto that, Ben did provide an updated memo to staff that said he now concurs with the 5.8 version. So everyone
Right.
should be in alignment.
That's right. That was in our packet. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Len.
Okay, immediately next to a climbing area in a little park, there was a multi-trunk tree, those trunks laying down close to the ground. And I'm going to pass a picture of that tree across.
Yes. So I believe we can, so let me just clarify, and I hope that staff emailed you earlier, but we had said at the last meeting that that tree is the preservation tree. It's not. Tree 2 is the one in the middle of the play area. We verified it. We tagged it. The tree that you're discussing is not in the play area. It's under a building. So unfortunately, that tree is not staying. Do you have that?
Yeah, you had told the
I did.
city council that that tree was going to be saved, and it is, I can see by the drawings here that, it slightly overlaps the building. Have you endeavored at all to move the building slightly to accommodate that tree? It just seems like.
We looked at it because it is a good climbing tree. We can't do it without losing at least one unit and potentially two. So at this point, we're going to have to see what we can do to replace it. But no, that was disappointing.
Do you know the number? Do you know which tree number
It's
that is?
number 2.
Okay, thank you.
So just to clarify here,
The red green one.
Right.
okay, just to clarify, the city council was told that number 2 would remain. And we were told at the last meeting that number 2 would remain. Unequivocally, you were very adamant about that.
Yeah. So the city
Okay,
council.
wait, I'm not done with my question.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So, so number 2 though is not going to remain.
Kelso, can you bring them up? Are you ready? Okay. So the council, this was brought up by board member Diedler to council as a public comment. And council asked us to look into it, which we did. And we believed that tree number 2, we had confused tree number 2 with tree number 4. So when we went back out there, we tagged it, we GPSed it. It's very clear that this tree, which is the tree that you're talking about, board member Diedler, that tree is under building. I don't have a number on this plan, but it's under a 5-home building. And so we did not tell the council that we were keeping it, but we did tell you at the last meeting that I very clearly told you that that tree was being preserved, and updating the arborist report, I am corrected.
All right, thank you. Lan, any other questions?
I just, so you're saying any adjustment to the building locations is beyond consideration in this case.
Correct. Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Lynn?
Not immediately.
All right. Christine?
I just want to clarify, we started talking about the buildings and we've got two separate boards here. We've got the design review board and the tree board, and now we're back into sort of, in my mind, chaotically mixing the two. And I think we should do one and then do the other because they're two separate topics and we may have more leverage as a board, as a tree board to make comments, whereas it seems like from my understanding on the design review part, there's very little that we can comment on and address.
Okay. To be honest, I don't know that I've been part of a project where we have both simultaneously, but so staff, does it make sense we should address those separately as if we're two separate boards?
I mean, it's up to the chair, but unless, David, if you have anything else to add.
You know, I think it really is up to the board in terms of your past practice. What have you done in the past? What's standard? I would say that tree removal is key in terms of understanding the site, what's possible in terms of development. So you may want to continue your discussion, complete your discussion on tree removal,
Mm-hmm.
and then move from there.
I mean, that would be more clear anyway. So, okay, well, let's just, let's stick to that then. Any comments, questions about trees? I mean, I guess according to staff, we're in deliberation at this point. Is there a public comment period on this item? We should do that first if there is, no? We're not asking questions of the staff or of the applicant, so typically we have public comment and then we deliberate.
Right. It's my understanding from staff that the public hearing was closed, that there was a request for information from the applicants. The applicants have provided information adjustments back, and you're asking for clarification as a board of the applicants. So I would keep it there.
Okay.
Questions between yourselves and the applicant for clarification so that you can move forward with your decision.
Right. Okay. All right. That makes sense to me. So again, we're going to focus on the tree removals first overall. So if anybody has any questions, clarifying questions to our applicant while she is standing at the podium. Gary?
I think I'd like to ask another question, if it's okay with the arborist. But in your opinion, this site has a number of multi-trunk live oaks. Is that due to mitigation practice at some point based on its past use, or what are your general assessments for the health and the longevity of some of the trees that are there?
Well, it's a nice population of trees. They're generally healthy. The low multi-trunk trees are probably a result of mowing in the past. Otherwise, you'd have a single stump, and there's no defect or deficiency in a multi-trunk tree versus a single trunk tree. But no, overall, it's a nice, healthy population of trees. No significant general issues.
Thank
I have
you.
a quick question for the arborist.
Okay.
I agree with you. It's a very healthy, beautiful population of trees. And I don't see that commonly, that many together. Do you think it's water? There's water there? Taproot? Well, there's a huge number of really healthy trees on that site.
That's a good question. I don't have a solid answer. You've got good soil. You've probably got some component of moisture drainage runoff that facilitates healthy tree growth. Beyond that, they're doing what they do. And it is nice soil. A lot of areas in Sonoma County, Sebastopol, don't have that quality of soil.
So this grove overall, there's actually, I see it as kind of like multiple groupings on this site. And did you find that to be somewhat unusual around here? Or, I haven't seen something, it's remarkably healthy.
Well, I think you got the components of the remnant apple orchard So that would be one of the components you're probably talking about. We're saving some of the native trees along the perimeter, but many of those perimeter trees are planted trees.
Well, no, I'm talking about the oaks. I agree. I think that the trees along the property line, I think a lot of those were probably planted as part of the mitigation at some point.
Probably.
Yes.
Right.
And those are redwoods, and they're doing what redwoods do so well.
They are.
But the kind of the precious trees are the oaks. I mean, they're all over the site performing very well, and I'm just curious about so you're saying the soil conditions, and I was just wondering possibly water, is it tapping into some water?
That could be probably a combination of those two. I mean, clearly it was chosen by the apple grower as a good site for tree growth. So that may have some relationship to the native trees. It's a nice regenerating site, some big trees, some small trees. Not unusual. It's what oaks do. When you abandon use of an area, they'll come right back, just like they're doing.
So this is just a curiosity question, but like tree number 109, I mean, how old would you guess that tree is?
Give me a second. So you are talking about a 19 plus 30 inch coast live oak in good condition. That tree could easily be 120, 130, maybe 140, something like that.
Because it's huge.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, just a question of curiosity. I appreciate your expertise.
Sure.
Thanks, Christine. All right. Any other tree-related questions? Melissa, anything? So we're not actually doing public comment. So thank you anyway, but we're going to continue deliberation on the board here. Marshall?
Could I make a comment?
Sure.
I'm looking at this tree number 2.
Marshall, make sure you're talking to the microphone.
Pardon?
Make sure you're talking to the microphone.
Oh, I was looking at tree number 2, and I know you can move buildings around a little bit, but in that case, the tree seems to be square under the building, and there's no way, in my opinion, that you can move that particular building to save that tree. It would disrupt the driveway aisle, the parking, the little park area that's formed between 3 buildings. There's just no way to do it without eliminating the building, and I don't know that that's feasible. So that's just a comment on my part, my opinion.
All right. Thank you, Marshall. Any other tree-related comments we have? So overall, we have now 25 trees that are proposed to be removed. Is there any, Gary?
Yeah, sure. I'd like to ask the landscape architect if they're present or such, that they may have proposed mitigation measures. We have a tree plan to look at.
Yes, so Trevor Rathbone from C2 Landscape Architects is on Zoom, and he's our landscape architect. I believe for the 25 trees we're removing, it's a 2-to-1 mitigation requirement.
Correct.
And we're planting 140 new trees and exceeding the 15-gallon requirement.
Yeah, that's correct. And our goal is to create an understory that works with the existing trees. So we've been talking with the arborists since the beginning on what that looks like and proposing trees that would be compatible with the existing trees and enhance the experience for this urban forest.
All right. Thank you, Trevor.
You're welcome.
Does that answer your question, Carrie, or any other questions?
It does. I'd be curious to what would you consider from your plant palette to be the overstory specimen?
Well, the overstory is the existing sequoias and oaks. The understory would be other deciduous trees that are a little smaller in scale, like Cornus cusa, which is a dogwood, birch trees like a Betula alba. Obviously, along the perimeters where the existing neighbors are, we're proposing smaller evergreen trees because we want to really screen those edges at the neighbor's request. So we're looking at Laurus nobilis, which is a bay laurel, which is a third to half the size of a sequoia or oak that would be adjacent to it.
Are there any new proposed oaks being introduced here?
And Trevor, maybe you can also speak to the proposed redwoods as well. Is that helpful information?
I was primarily asking about the proposed trees that I'm seeing as part of the conceptual plant palette, and I'm curious of just what of those proposed trees, what would be considered the more dominant species, right? The more overstory qualities that may populate this site with some stature.
Well, we haven't gotten to that level of detail yet. It's a conceptual plan at this point in time. But we certainly work with the city on that, especially the city arborist, as we get into plan check. So we have not made that determination yet of what the primary tree would be.
Okay, thank you, Trevor.
You're welcome.
Gary, anything else? Okay. Any other tree discussion questions from the board? All right, seeing none, would somebody like to make I guess we can, so we'll vote. I don't know that we'll vote on this separately.
Wait. Those are questions for the applicant. Are we going to have a discussion amongst ourselves?
This is all deliberation. This is all part of our deliberation, and we're clarifying questions. But yes, please, we can talk about the whole tree removal strategy or trees to be removed.
Okay, I'm going to make a comment, and it's just a comment as I scribble on my paper here to. What we are doing here with this project. First of all, this project exists. I don't know if any of you know about this, but it exists over at Round Barn. Have you guys been over there to see it? Yeah, it exists at Round Barn right across the street from the little Kaiser facility on Round Barn Road. This project exactly. And yeah, over on Round Barn. Yeah, this exact project exists. Same buildings, same units, same floor plans, same.
And
it's interesting to go over there and experience what I'm going to talk about, because when I was over there, I went over there and walked around, and my overarching impression was that we had a bunch of buildings in a parking lot. And so I'm just commenting here that we're taking this fertile, nurturing land with these absolutely epic trees, 24 of them of which we're going to remove, and we're replacing it, just so we're clear on this, with asphalt roads, asphalt driveways, asphalt roofs. Almost the entire site is asphalt. That's going to create a heat sink for sure. But that's what we're paving over incredibly fertile, nurturing soil. And we're cutting down epic heritage trees, 24 of them. I don't know if we have any say-so on this. I doubt it. I think it's already preordained, but I just want to make that point that the bulk of this property is going to be asphalt. And if you go over to Round Barn and you walk around, you will know what I'm talking about.
All right, thank you. Lynn, any other comments you'd like to make? Anybody else? Okay. If there's no further discussion, I guess since we are taking these issues separately, but I don't know that we vote on them separately. So it seems like overall we're being asked to just vote on the project now.
No, I think I discussed with him that we're voting on
I
them
know
separately.
I know it was discussed,
Okay.
but what's presented to us in the staff report is kind of an overall project. Tree removal is one. We've now talked about that, and we can fashion a motion on that and vote on that separately, or we can continue talking about the rest of the project and vote on it as a whole. Do you have any recommendations, John or David? Just to be clear.
I don't. There's, the overall project does include both components of it, so it's really up to the chair and the board on how you'd like to get to that endpoint.
All right. Well, I guess since we've gone over the trees, maybe we should just vote about the tree removals, and then we can move on to other items. So would anybody like to fashion a motion about the tree removal component of this project?
Can I ask one more quick question?
Sure.
Regarding the SB 330 and the mandates from the state, what can we say about the tree removal?
If I could, I'm kind of stepping into this, and I understand that your planning commission and city council have already reviewed and approved the basic entitlements for this project. You're coming in kind of at the end and working with design elements and tree preservation and removal. The core entitlements that I'll say city council has approved based on planning commission recommendation are your base. That's your base. So as the staff, as John Jay, the associate planner, indicated in his staff report, you have certain areas to focus on. And in some cases, those areas may, as we discussed earlier, transition into areas that are less objective and more subjective. And I think we discussed that. In terms of moving forward on this, the staff has prepared a document for action. And I would suggest if you're in general support of that document, you go forward and your motion and second and action be based on that document. In terms of any hesitation on that, in terms of language, you may want to look at language in terms of support. We talked about that a little bit earlier. I'd like to confer with John a little bit on that. I did not prepare this document, but my sense is that you have a willing applicant. You have a core entitlement approval. You've had, I think, several meetings about this. There have been adjustments, and the project has moved forward with your codes in place. It appears to be in general compliance with applicable codes of the city of Sebastopol. So my sense generally is that you move forward with this based on the staff recommendation.
Okay, so for clarification.
Sure.
First of all, I just want to say regarding the tree removal, we haven't had any meetings about it because the pages were unreadable and the tags had fallen off the trees. So this is the first time actually we're looking at the trees, the tag trees, the document. But my understanding with this project is that the fact that this project has been gotten to this point, you're going to have to assume the tree removal.
I think to a large extent that's true.
So therefore, there really isn't any discussion here. I mean, the trees that are being shown to be removed, well, I would say I highly disagree with the whole aspect of what we're doing here. There's really no say-so because the project's been approved as is generally. And so there's really nothing to say about the tree removal. It's kind of really already preordained, if I'm making sense.
You are making sense, and I understand from staff that in terms of prior materials, they weren't as legible as they could have been, et cetera, as you described. And yet, I also understand that there were some adjustments made based on comments of staff and the board. I think that at this point, given the prior approvals, as you described, that given your role at this point, you've made directly or indirectly some adjustments. And it appears to me that based on the staff report, the document for action, that it's ready to move forward for approval.
I think that's well said, David. I think to Christine's point, the project, the approvals that have been granted to the project, sort of, there's nothing much we can do about it. We can comment on if we like the color or not, which we've already given feedback on, and they've come back with new colors. And so I think it seems to me at this point, people can add comments about landscaping or solar or fencing or these items that are on our list here. And then, so to take back where I was going, and just voting on trees, we really should just go through other parts of the project and vote as a whole. I think that makes more sense given what we just heard from our planning director.
I respectfully disagree, just so you know. I think we should vote on the trees now and vote on each item separately. Because then we're very clear about what we're voting for or against. It's very clear. Because this project, we are not generally voting for. We don't have the opportunity. That has been taken away from us by state mandate to say what we might say about this project in our town.
Well,
Okay, so what I would like to be able to do is to be able to go on record as saying, okay, that right has been taken away from us by the state of California. And so, but I can vote to say, do I approve the colors? I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with the colors. Do I approve this aspect or that aspect of it that I'm allowed to vote for? That I'm allowed to say something about? Because I'm not allowed to say, for example, about this tree removal, that came to us after the fact. So we really didn't get to say, this precious heritage tree, we want you to work your design around. Like, we don't have that opportunity. They came with us with a design that assumed all these trees are going to be removed. And they were willing along the edges to do something about it. But we don't have any say-so with this. Anybody else that's come before our board with any of these heritage trees would have been denied removal of such a tree. I don't know if you've been out there and looked at them, but they're fantastic. So I think, this is for the record, because we don't have any say so. This is going to go forward. They're going to go forward with this project. It's mandated by the state.
So everything you just said is on the record, right? Everything we say at this board is on the record.
Correct.
And there's definitely times I've been in a position where I know what the vote's going to be, and I'm going to go yes or no against it, but I want to make sure my comments and my opinions are recorded, because it can be, as you know, for the next project, right? The precedent that we talk about or the decisions and discussion we have can affect the next project that comes in. And if just we're raising issues. So to me, I think that's already happening. It's been happening this meeting and the last meeting. And actually this project was seen by this board quite a long time ago. We could have predicted even then a bunch of these trees would have been removed if they wanted to do what they wanted to do. And sort of on that note, I'm very, we have to remember that they could do even more units on this property, and they're choosing to do less, to do fewer. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. We've had a lot of opportunity to talk in this process already. So, and it seems pretty clear, as you're saying, as David's saying, where this is headed. So I would actually continue with the idea that we just talk about the other items and vote on the project as a whole.
Chair, if I could, I think I'm understanding a bigger picture issue here. And I've had some conversation with staff about this already. I think that in terms of your process, your overall process, that a comment for the record coming from this board, not necessarily from staff, it appears that really some of these issues, like tree preservation and tree removal, should occur much earlier in the process. At this time with this project, given where it is, the state mandate, et cetera, I'm not sure that this is the time to have that discussion. But it is a bigger picture issue that the city of Sebastopol should take on and address with your city council in terms of overall process. And maybe that's something, if you haven't already, you probably have, but if you haven't already, I think that's a discussion that you should have.
Well, it's part of the discussion that's somewhat presented to us today about combining boards, right? So we've all advocated at different times, I think, of where preliminary design review is the most important part of the process, and not at this point where it's kind of done. And what do we say? You know, so it is a topic under discussion. Maybe fiscally, it came about financially, but it's process that we have to talk about. Lynn, yep.
I think for clarity and just quickness in moving through this, I support the thought of let's vote on each thing separately, you know, and get the trees taken care of, get the colors taken care of, and so on. And so I understand her not wanting to have her name on something that is a particular thing like the trees, but let us each vote on the things that we're going to make decisions on. That's my request.
Thank you. Any other feelings from this side of the board?
I would just ask that somebody turn on the AC.
That would be nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. You know, I'm willing to take it all at once, or we can divide this. It's my question, or my comment for having understanding that there's a project before us that's been approved. It's got its impacts. We're going to see trees be removed. That's the nature of the zoning of this project that's allowable. It's also needed. This process has been ongoing, and I'd like to thank the applicant for actually their submittal. And my thought is the mitigation should be that maybe we see just more oaks planted where they're applicable. You know, we can mitigate in a smart measure. If we're going to develop a project that will be developed, we can see it get done properly, maybe to a more native context that I believe has been suggested. So those are some of my comments from a more deliberation. It sort of wraps itself into landscaping to some degree and beyond, right? So it all ties into the more design components that we're looking at as a large and a whole. But if we had to design or at least discuss the removal or remain of certain trees, my only comment for that would be to possibly mitigate with more native species, more of the valley oaks, maybe the black oaks where applicable, some live oaks. Again, there's a good opportunity for more legacy. And I think that the applicant was, suggesting that. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Melissa, any other comments?
I would support that, and maybe adding a condition of approval for the removal of the trees that encourages emphasis on replacement in kind. Right now there's, I think, 14 trees listed on the proposed trees, none of which are oaks. So maybe we can have those included.
Okay.
If I could, through the chair, I think in terms of information clarification, there is a tree list here, and your points are well taken about oaks being included. I'm not seeing much in the way of oaks in terms of this tree list, but given the site and given the proposed development, it may be helpful to receive clarification from the arborist in terms of the opportunity, which there probably is some. Again, trying to get clarity for staff in terms of implementation, what that might mean in terms of the types of oak trees and the appropriateness of those oak trees on this site. That's likely, but it would be helpful to get some feedback. You have an expert here, I think, that could provide feedback.
Yeah, that would be nice. I mean, Carrie asked that question, and it was sort of, pushed aside as if this is a preliminary plan. But since we do have the arborist landscape architect present, would you, one of you, be willing to come up to the podium and respond to that concern?
I don't think it's unreasonable to work with the landscape architect to increase the number of oaks that are going to be planted. We are listing black oaks, valley oaks, and coast live oak in the conceptual plant palette. I don't know if there are numbers or not, but we can certainly work on that. There's absolutely no reason. We know this site supports oaks, and I like the legacy idea, and I'm sure we can work together on this side and come up with more oaks than we're maybe showing or considering right now.
It's just listed as an existing tree, so it's not clear whether that means you would use existing trees in the
Okay.
palette
You're
as
absolutely
new trees also.
You're absolutely right.
And the landscape architect did not address that. He was saying existing trees are the bigger ones, and we're going to plant smaller ones.
Okay.
Was his
I think
comment.
there's plenty of room on this site to. I mean, the oaks are larger stature trees. There's no reason why we can't incorporate those.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Well, sorry for all the confusion, but since we were sort of almost coming to a motion there in terms of a condition on trees, why don't we go ahead and do a vote just on the trees, tree removals, and tree palette, I guess we could call it. Is there any other discussion before we do that?
I think once we do the motion, we can have a little bit of discussion.
Sure. Yep. Okay. Would someone like to make a motion about the proposed tree removals?
Sure. I'll make a motion that we proceed to vote on the tree program that's being submitted.
We need a motion to approve or deny or continue. Trees only, yeah. So we need a motion. We are coming to a vote. We need a motion to vote on.
Well, that's the intent.
Could you
to vote on this? Yes.
But unless I'm not clear, what we need is a motion. Yes, we're in favor of what's proposed, or no, we're against it. And then we vote on that. Well, we discuss, and then we vote on that. So the motion you're putting forward is just to vote. So it doesn't give us anything to do. Do you know what I'm saying?
If, through the chair, if I could suggest in terms of a motion, and maybe this is just a motion to vote, but again, trying to be a little more objective than subjective and provide clarity both to the applicants and to staff in terms of implementation. The arborist, Mr. Meserve, indicated a number of oaks that could be planted. I don't think they're actually listed on the conceptual plant palette. And so I think
they're listed as existing
correct,
plant palette.
That is correct. But in terms of proposed. And so I think it would be helpful, again, we have an expert here to get some feedback in terms of your motion and clarity for all parties involved. And this would be objective in terms of what types and maybe some reasonable percentage. Is it 10%? And Mr. Meserve would know that certainly better than we as staff, or certainly better than I would know. But I think instead of as applicable or as feasible, that if we could get some feedback to better assure that in terms of the types of oaks, let's say, and the quantity, some percentage, and again, they can be placed where appropriate with consultation with the arborist and landscape architect, et cetera, but kind of a reasonable, objective standard might be a good way to go as a suggestion.
So I hear what you're saying, but this project will all come to the city as a building permit project. So more typically, it seems like our board makes recommendations less specific than that. You know, he's agreed we could do oaks. We want to add some oaks. I don't know that, is that necessary? Like we actually say we want 50% oaks and leave it up to them to place them? Or are we just giving the recommendation that we want a more native landscape with more oak trees? And then they come up with their revised planting plan.
I think there's middle ground. I think you've got an expert here that probably could provide some, he knows the site, some parameter, again, that's reasonable so that when that building permit application comes in, that, you know, we can look for a certain number. Again, we can work, staff can work with the applicant and representatives on placement. We understand that. There are buildings, there are site conditions, et cetera, et cetera. We understand that. But just to kind of pin this down a little bit so that for all parties involved, we have, you know, a minimum, I'll say, and could be more, but so that it's not just an uncertainty. And again, I don't have that expertise, but I think that expertise might be here in the audience as a suggestion.
May I,
Melissa?
Chair?
Yeah.
Thank you. The arborist, sorry, you're gonna get your ups and downs in today. Great. Would it be unreasonable to say for the 25 trees that are being replaced, they be replaced in kind or in species kind on the site?
I appreciate your trust, but the percentage, you're dragging me into design, and I don't want to recommend something that's not reasonable in terms of design. The areas that are there, the ultimate size of the trees, I haven't studied that.
Sure.
So I appreciate that, Mr. Woltering. Maybe the landscape architect could weigh in. He's a lot more familiar with the design of the site, what he's already considering.
Okay.
I'd be most comfortable hearing from him rather than me throwing out a number that
That's fair. Thank you.
is maybe not accurate.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Fair enough.
Trevor, would you, if you're following that, would you like to weigh in?
Yes, looking at the site plan, there's definitely opportunities to add oaks on the perimeter and in areas that aren't near, per se, the road or in proximity to buildings. Working in this industry for 25 years, I'm aware of how HOAs respond when they have to maintain a tree that gets potentially 50 feet high and 50 feet around. So that's one of the starting points for how I was looking at this particular project and why I was not originally including any oaks in the proposed palette. But we could certainly take a look at how to do that, and through the plan check process, work with staff on how to best accomplish that goal.
Trevor, could you commit to a number?
Not at this point in time, because it's a conceptual plan, but if you want to condition like 10%, I think we could probably make that work.
So 14, 14 oaks?
10% of the new trees planted, which is 140 something, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we certainly shoot for more, but it'd be risky to commit to a number at this conceptual level before we get through the grading plans and the final improvement plans and see really where the streets and utilities are landing. Because the utilities tend to cause us to lose trees when we get further down into the construction document process.
But we won't be losing any more on this site.
No, I just mean trees that we propose. In my experience, yeah, when we propose trees, we're like, oh no, now we need something there that we weren't anticipating at a conceptual level. So,
Sure. Would the chair permit me to make a motion?
Yes, please.
Let's do it.
Well,
I would-
actually, before you do
Oh,
that,
yeah.
if we had a motion started, is there a protocol where we have to, like, he has to redo it or remove it before we go on, or?
Yes, you would either have a second or he can remove his
Right.
motion.
Okay, so we'll move on. Melissa?
I move that we approve the tree plan as proposed with the condition of approval that 10% of new trees planted, approximately 14 of the new trees will be oaks consistent with what's currently on site.
All right, thank you for that. Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Great, thank you. Any further discussion?
I'm going to make a comment.
Okay,
Okay. I'm coming upon this vote with extreme prejudice. I think this is absolutely the wrong project for this site. We're asphalting over beautiful nature, and we're not going to replace this guy with a sapling. So the reason why I wanted to hold this separately is because I want to reserve the right to abstain from voting, because I understand why it got to this point, although I hadn't personally no say-so in this. I wasn't at the first meeting. And like I said, I'm coming at this with extreme prejudice. I think this is an environmental disaster. I think that we're forced into this position by the state mandates, the housing element and the state laws, and we don't have say-so. I've had people coming to me crying over those trees. And I just think I'm just completely against the removal of the trees. That said, I don't have any problem with approving other aspects of the project as we're going to approve, and that's why I was pushing to hold this separately, and I'd like to abstain from voting due to my extreme prejudice.
okay. Any other discussion? Lynn, you can turn your mic on if you would like to.
Yeah. I've had no input into this at all. I don't feel like I've been a participant in the discussion, in what's happening here, and I'm an observer, and I feel the need to abstain as well.
Well, so we haven't taken a vote yet, but now we know two of the votes. Any other discussion? Okay, can we go ahead and take a roll call then, John?
Yes, Christine Lovell. Lynn Diedler.
Abstain.
Carrie Bush.
Aye.
Vice Chair Hanley.
Aye.
And Chair Langberg.
Aye.
All right, so that motion passes with 3 ayes, no yes, or no, 3 ayes, no noes, and 2 abstentions.
All right, thank you. So then we can move on to other parts of the design that we've been asked to look at, which include fencing. Maybe we should do landscaping next after trees and move from there. But then we have fencing, open space is on our list, building mass, color, overall design, building design.
Yeah, and Chair, if I may, I would possibly combine all these as kind of one vote.
Yeah.
I don't know if doing them individually off every single component of the project makes sense.
No, I would agree with that, unless the discussion take us in a different direction. But I think that's a good idea. So we would like to deliberate, discuss these other elements of our project.
I have a question for the applicant on the color schemes. The renderings have not been updated to reflect these colors.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So the rendering on the bottom right has been updated to reflect Scheme 1. And so when we kind of last met with you, we tried to take the white out so that it wasn't, I think the word was stark. And so we have 3 different schemes of green. I have a site plan that I can put up if you'd like to see of how those are plotted on the site. But this is the only rendering. I haven't done a rendering 2 or a rendering 3 with those colors.
But the idea is we'd have all 3 schemes on site.
The idea is you have all 3 schemes on the site, and I have some inspirational imagery that was added to the to the packet or
Mhm.
to the submittal drawings that indicates kind of what those look like.
Yeah, A29 and A30 in particular, those
Correct.
pages.
Correct.
So is it safe for us to omit sheet A28? It seems like the only thing still in play is the guardrail and maybe the site lighting.
I think that is just to show the details. If I'm remembering, it's the one with the middle and it still looks white. But
Yeah.
yes, from a color standpoint, that is not the color that we're proposing.
Okay.
So let me know if you want to
And
say
the,
anything.
and the doors will be red?
The doors will be what?
Red?
So this was something that was discussed at length in our office because we looked at having a wood door versus actually having more of a monochromatic door. And so what our colorist kind of recommended, which is AT Designs, and she's not on the call today, but the color for the whole building, the trim on the windows, the doors, they're all that main green. And then the railings, the wood, all the wood accents, the corbels are all cedar, stain grade cedar with the stain that's shown on the board here. And then the window framing for all windows, whether it's the color scheme 1, 2, or 3, is the one you see on the bottom, which is a bronze color. And then the roof is it's called the moire black essentially, but it's a cool roof. And if there are darker colors, but the cool roofability goes away.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions while our applicant is standing up here? Lynn?
Yeah. Are you thinking about painting all of those colors right there are going to be used exclusively?
Yeah, so exactly. So the 3 schemes happen across the 80 homes. And again, it may be helpful for me to project the image of how they're plotted. But the idea was not to have like 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 1 and then 2 and then 3, but to kind of cluster schemes in a way where as you drive in, you're seeing one scheme. As you go further south towards the knuckle, you're seeing a second scheme so that it feels more cohesive.
Makes sense.
Does that answer your question?
Can I make a statement that involves her?
Well, let's ask any other questions while she's here, while she's standing up. I mean, we can always bring her back up, but are there any other specific questions while we have clarifications on these other items? No. Christine?
Is part of this discussion, we've got the colors here, so we're talking about the colors. Is part of this discussion the guardrails? Is that part of the, okay, and those are going to be painted?
Are these the railings on the building or the fences? The answers to both are
The guardrails on the balconies.
Correct. Those are stain grade cedar, so they're not painted, they're stained, they're wood.
Okay.
Like the rendering does show them. I don't know, it's kind of hard to see unless you're at my angle, John. I don't know if we can put it on a chair.
Well, it's on the boards as well, or on A28.
Okay, so one of the questions that I have is that, given this statement in here about we can make recommendations, but you don't have to follow them. And the guardrails on your identical project at Round Barn are quite different from this. So are you committing to a stain grain cedar, or are we saying yes or no on that? I'm a little confused about.
So we're proposing a stain grade cedar. I'm not sure what else the question is.
Well, this document here gives you the opportunity to do something else. So
Yeah, let me speak to that. And I'm a planning commissioner where I live too, and we also don't have objective standards in Pacifica where I'm a planning commissioner. At the time this project was submitted, there were not objective standards that the city had adopted. You do have objective standards now. They don't apply to this project. I've removed the council ring, like all the things that we talked about. I would like to be responsive. And so if you have comments, I would love to hear them. And I would love to try to figure out how to integrate it in a way that everyone is happy. I understand for you, especially based on your last statement, we may not get there. But if you have a comment, I would love to try to take it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand it if this is what, the plan is. So the plan is to be.
This is our formal proposal. What I did was I took the colors that we usually start working with during construction documents. I moved it ahead of time, and this is what we're actually proposing.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Sure.
Lynn, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I saw a project that I thought would really work well for the colors here. And that is your round barn project.
Oh, you're back to the white.
Yeah, and except for the white is true, and I'm going to pass these are pictures of their round barn project and the colors that they are. But these colors are a little softer, a little warmer and more inviting, yet they still have that feel that sure, they'd work great with that setting. I don't think it has to be as dark as the bark of the tree. And I would like to see something very similar to what you've done there.
All right, thank you, Lynn. Any other comments over here? Carrie? Melissa?
I respectfully disagree. I don't know that we need more beige buildings. I'm really excited about this color palette. I think it'll help the building sort of sit more quietly on the site, especially with the tree canopies that we have in place. There's going to be some lovely shading and lovely outdoor space. I think sitting quietly is a nice thing, and I appreciate the changes. My only recommendations from personal experience is that color scheme 1, you will see every cobweb that lives on that building. I painted my house black, and it's a bit of a maintenance nightmare. So maybe a couple clicks later, but the 3 feel like they sit really nicely, and it feels nicely responsive.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Melissa.
Can you pass those along?
They went down and back. I think everybody saw these down there. Yeah. Okay, well, there's some color discussion. Any landscape discussion from what's been proposed?
Yeah, my main concern about the landscaping is given that these are airspace condos and they're going to be paying a homeowners association fee, which is then going to mount up as they need repairs and maintenance, that the landscaping kind of dies on the vine and doesn't get maintained. I don't know what you do about that. I'm just making a comment. My experience in seeing these airspace condos is over time, the landscape all dies. And I don't know what you do about that, but I'm just putting that out there.
All right, thank you. Any other landscaping comments, Gary?
Sure, yeah. Always have to talk about landscape.
Yeah.
Well, overall, general comments are, it was fun to hear the conceptual background being sort of discussed by Jens Jensen as a conceptual model. It's a fantastic model to represent, amazing landscape architect and quite a troubadour in his time. So I do caution, though, however, the notion of a native planting scheme going in non-native soil. We all know that that'll be compacted to 90% and lots of fill inclusive to what in that site after construction. So seeing, Pacific coast iris thrive in compacted base rock is not necessarily cohesive. So we always wonder, how do you really blend native to architectural? And it's not as easy as it sounds. Living amongst oaks that don't generally like people, we joke about that there's a level of tolerance that they often deal with humans. But the idea of still trying to promote that characteristic in a landscape, I think it makes it contextual. That was what was discussed. And, coming from a prairie style or a pastoral viewpoint, I think that's a great planting strategy. I think that's what we see in this planting material. So it's nice. It is contextual. You have water use calcs to sort of mitigate. They need to be zoned properly. It's not as easy also as sounds when you have something maybe like the birch, for example. It's hard to establish understory material under a birch. They just suck up water. They're tough. And so what you're going to have under a birch is not necessarily easy to do. Some of the other things in some of the proposed trees are, maybe a little more water non-friendly. Some of the Cornus Floridas, you can again isolate those and zone them differently and wet them differently. But that's a East Coast plant, Southern plant from classic Eastern rosebud, as they put it. That's a little different. But overall, it's about understory. I like the idea of the Coosa dogwoods. I mean, that creates place and very contextual to a mixed use development like we see here. And then you're also providing a lot of four season interest, which is also nice. Some of the other things that I may just be a little cautious of might be the rosemary. That's a typically fire prone plant. That's on a fire watch plant list. Horsetail in general, the equisetum can be pretty invasive. So once you introduce to a site, you're basically never going to get rid of it. So I would caution that one. That would be another.
May I ask a clarifying question on
Sure,
the
yeah.
rosemary?
Mhm.
The thought there, so we're trying to do pollinator attracting species.
Mhm.
Do you have the same concern about like a lavender, or do you have like a replacement that you think would be good?
Well, there's a number of I guess comparable plants that could be pollinators. Yeah, I mean, lavender's a nice plant. It's very short-lived. There's a romance to lavender, but I mean, it doesn't generally like water, so that's sort of its attraction. But it's short-lived, and I think much to our board's comment that things need to be maintained. That's without a doubt the fourth factor of any good design, is that maintenance comes, especially landscapes, come with time. It's not a static material. It's very dynamic. It has a lot of factors that we see come and go over seasons. If you're going to see something succeed, as was suggested, it needs to be very well maintained. And if it's a condition of the board, I'd like to also see that be a condition made through HOA. I don't know if there's a percentage of success rate that we might want to introduce or whatnot, but it's always easier said than done. But
I'd like to speak to that just briefly.
Sure.
Since we have an airspace condo, they're going to have a contract for maintenance, which is just going to be maintenance. But a lot of these plants that we're talking about here, like lavender and rosemary, they need to be, in not too short of a time, completely uprooted and replanted. And so that's not going to be part of maintenance. That's going to be additional cost. It's not going to be maintenance. So I don't know how you deal with that. In these types of, when you've got 80 units that are sharing one maintenance contractor that's going to come in, I don't want to use the word, but I'm going to say blow and go and clean it up, and off they're going to go. And how do you deal with these types of things with these plants? I don't know the answer, because with my garden, in which is extensive, I'm pulling stuff up. I just had to pull up a whole bunch of lavender. I mean, otherwise it just, you know what happens to it. Rosemary's no different. So I don't know how, and you see these developments, you see them all around here, and basically our own city hall is the crying shame of them all. They end up looking just ratty and terrible. So what do you do? What is the solution to that? I don't know the answer, but.
Well, to answer that, I think it comes with trusting your designer. I mean, there's a commitment to their client, and trying to assure them that there's some expectation, design expectation, specifically when it comes to a planting plan. How it's maintained is probably the biggest of that, but it comes with the right plant, right place, comes with good maintenance regime, and there's a fickleness to it, but it can be done. So I'm not here to overstep that boundary or second guess that, but what I'm seeing, again, along the lines of shrubs that are, again, contextual, they're native, they do take good water use conditions, both dry and wet in some areas. But again, there's a balance that the landscape architect and or the irrigation designer will have to commit to, and it'll come with the maximum efficient water ordinance, or the applied water allowance. So they'll have those calculations to have to manage. And that is something that this board really has no control over. It has to conform to those standards.
Yeah, and to be perfectly clear, I'm not trying to have any control. I'm just making a general comment. Yeah, I'm not making a statement. I'm just looking from the purpose of this board. I'm looking at the presentation as it stays today. Like, it's going to look really nice when it's first put in. It's going to be beautiful. Beyond that case, I don't know what to say about it.
Again, through the chair, if I could, I'm listening to your comments, and of course, there's WELO and things that, in terms of water efficiency, the landscape architect will need to deal with the city. Sometimes with projects like this, you're mentioning a lot of long-term concerns in terms of replacement and maintenance. And it could be that as part of the final landscape plan that's submitted for review with the building permit, that basically the landscape architect is directed to prepare and submit kind of an evaluation of the final landscape material palette in terms of long-term sustainability, in terms of just ongoing maintenance, replacement, whatnot, so that's part of the final landscape plan to kind of address some of your concerns. It's not foolproof, but at least, I think the landscape architect would be thinking in this direction in any case, but it forces, in a sense, the landscape architect and team to really think it through, put it down on paper, and it be a part of the final landscape plan.
Maybe one way of addressing that is that, again, specifications allow for a maintenance period. Sometimes they're 6, 3, 9 months. Maybe it's a year and a half. But generally, most, if not all of ours, have at least some level of maintenance period, and that will be adjusted based on, again, the cost of that.
I see Trevor has his hand up there. Trevor, would you like to weigh in since we're talking about you?
Yes, I appreciate the compliments regarding the plant palette, and I just wanted to assure everyone that the water thirsty plants are something we add to the palette because we recognize we're going to have storm treatment areas. So in order to put plants in those that will survive, they need to be able to tolerate a higher amount of water. So, and those soil types are different in those bioretention areas. So that's why those are added to the list. And then everyone wants the HOA to be satisfied with their product. So we make every effort to make sure the plants are spaced appropriately. And say, for instance, a lavender is planted in a higher spot so it receives the proper drainage and the proper spacing so that it doesn't have to be replaced. Rosemary, for instance, as a ground cover, can live 20 years if it's not overwatered and it's planted in a higher location with good drainage and trimmed low. So we're pretty confident that with this list and using the plants in the correct locations on the site will ensure that it's a good product for the HOA and for the public that's going to walk through the site.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, are there any other comments on design items? Lynn?
Yeah, is your round barn project solar as well?
Yeah, so City Ventures is a solar all electric developer. That was a lot more impressive in 2010 than it is now. But yeah, all of the projects that we do, whether in here or in Morgan Hill, are solar all electric.
Okay. Your drawings here show the solar panels going on the roof and visible.
Yes.
At Round Barn, you don't see any of them.
Correct. That's a mansard roof. These are complete roofs. And part of being solar all electric and actually having effective solar, and part of the reason why these are condominiumized, is so that we can get the benefit of actually having the solar. So we condominiumize to have a monolithic array so that your solar panels don't have to be over your unit. you get a higher efficiency. Here where you have a lot of trees that are 60 feet tall, we're going to need to do the complete roofs to be able to actually get the shading to not essentially undermine the solar.
Okay.
All right. Any other comments, questions? No?
Just one more thing to bring up. What resolve did we have, if any, regarding the gate onto Hurlbut? That remains?
Yeah, we can talk about that. I mean, to me, that's a safer situation than what exists now or what exists in even other buildings that are on a busy street with no sidewalk, which we have a lot of around here. So I think it's actually a nice gesture to provide a little moment before you go out into traffic. But to have access from that part of the site to that road, I think is a good thing. It's done in a sensitive way.
So
That'd
that
be my
gate,
opinion.
is right here?
Mhm.
Is there, did I miss something? Is there a drawing or
Of the kind of vestibule part of it.
what that looks like?
It is on. I remember seeing it on a site plan somewhere. It's not detailed, but it's just got a little sort of recess from the fence line with a L2.
It's on sheet L5.
Thank you, Trevor.
Yeah, labeled pedestrian access to Hurlbut Avenue. And the idea is that it's a 42-inch height fence, wood fence with a wood gate, and there's some imagery on L6. The private yard fence and gate is probably the same style. So it's very subtle.
What's the depth of that vestibule?
I believe we designed it to be 7 feet so that a bicycle could easily maneuver through there if you were off your bike and walking your bike.
Would it be possible to increase that to around 8.5? So if you have a bike.
Yes.
Yeah. Great.
Yes, of course.
Bike with a kid on the back. Trailer bike.
Yeah, or like my bike is a Danish bike and it's huge. Like that would be great.
No problem.
So I still don't see any L sheets.
It's a colored landscape plan, predominantly green.
Good idea.
So what's happening right here? That's just the shoulder for Hurlbut.
I believe that's right. Yeah, I think it's a good idea as well. It seems like a nice approach. Okay. Any other questions, comments, or perhaps someone could fashion a motion on the project as a whole, other than the tree removal?
And John, we came up with one condition of approval last time about the maintenance of the Gravenstein trees along the.
Correct. That is, I believe, condition number 14. I can show it on the screen just so everybody's aware.
So regarding a motion, I would like the motion to list the specific items, which I think were mentioned once before. I would make the motion if I could list those, but I'm not saying that I can. The colors, the guardrails, is somebody in a position to do that?
It's here on the staff
Okay.
report. Design, building mass, open space, fencing, solar, and landscaping.
Okay, design building mass? I don't think so. I think that's preordained by the project. I mean, we're talking about the mass of the buildings.
That is listed on here. Yes, building
I
mass.
think that's preordained. Am I correct about that? We're not commenting on it. We're not commenting on the fact that the buildings are 37 feet tall.
So the massing in regards to the design components would be, is it one large blocky structure, or does it have articulation in a way with the roof and balconies and other things like that? So that component of the massing, not the building height massing.
Right.
Can we leave that out? We talked about the colors. We talked about the materials a little bit with the guardrail. We talked about the landscaping. I think we can have a motion surrounding those things and be done with it.
Sure. I think I would agree.
Okay, so I'm going to make an emotion that we approve the color scheme, the landscaping palette. I hesitate because I can't say what kind of language we want to put in there regarding the maintenance of the landscaping. So I'm just saying the landscaping as is, and I look for guidance on that. The gate. I think that's about it. Approve.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
With discussion, I would like to add perhaps a 1-year maintenance period to all landscaping, right?
Can you just, can you define that sort of? What
Yeah,
does
it'd be
that
a
mean?
minimum 1-year maintenance period for establishment, for plant material establishment.
That the applicant is required to maintain the landscaping for 1 year.
They are required to, after a final, they would be required to maintain part of their contract for at least 1 year. Yeah, to assure that all the plant material would take. Yeah, and anything that isn't taken would be replaced.
Okay. So can we add that to your motion?
Yeah, so the motion would be to approve the landscaping with what you just said.
With the 1-year maintenance
Yeah,
period.
okay. The color palette and the fences and gate.
If I could, the gate, it sounded as though there was agreement to increase the height of the entry to 8.5 feet.
Increase the depth.
The
The
depth.
depth,
Okay,
okay.
thank you.
Okay,
We
so,
could put that in. Thank you.
yeah, with the gate with an increased depth to 8.5 feet.
Okay, I think we got that. Do we have a second to that motion?
Carrie, was yours a second with that addition?
That'll be a second, yes.
Okay, and
Okay.
Christine, you were fine with that modification? Okay, so any further
discussion? Nope. Okay. Nope. Can you turn on your microphone?
Christine, you were talking about the guardrails. I just want to be clear that they presented wood, not paint. And so are you including in your motion that these be left like this? And
Yeah, stained, I think stained. Yeah, so I would consider that part of the paint. She wants to stain them.
Okay, so
yeah.
it's a stain color.
Yeah,
Ultimately.
yeah.
And it would
good
be,
point, though.
would it be like this, like a semi-transparent stain, or would it be a solid coat stain?
Well, what is she proposing?
Okay. The reason I'm
As
bringing this up
proposed.
is that they proposed this and I like it. And if
Right.
it's going to be different, I'd just like to
I
know.
totally agree. That was why I asked the questions I
Okay.
asked. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Can we take a vote, John?
Yes, Christine Lovell,
Aye.
Lynn Diedler, Carrie Bush,
Aye.
Vice Chair Henley,
Hi.
and Chair Langberg.
Aye.
All right, so that motion passes 5 ayes. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank the applicant for all your efforts here, for sure, and your time. Really appreciate it. And we have one other item on the agenda. Okay, we could take a 2-minute break, 2 or 3 minutes. Is that okay, everyone?
Yes, we do have.
Oh, we
Planning
have a
Commission
meeting at
af-
6.
After this.
Right.
So,
2 minutes.
yeah, if we could.
Run to the bathroom and back.
Recording stopped.
Oh, man. One of the best motions I've ever heard. Please turn on the air conditioning. Love that, man. I was like,
Yeah.
is it me or am I just like geek of sweat coming under my?
Yes, I remember the last time. Yeah.
Minutes away.
Well, Why did we come?
Well, I couldn't sleep last night thinking about it.
You know, what difference did we make? Okay, lots of questions.
We lost our associate planner. Can we start without him? We need him.
He's the presenter.
Exactly.
I think we need him.
I think so. So we're not live. Are we live still? We've been live through this whole thing. David, how are you enjoying the job so far? Anything to report?
It's great.
Yes, good answer. All right. Okay, thanks for
Recording in progress.
Okay, we are reconvening with agenda item 7B, 845 Gravenstein Highway North. John, would you give us the latest?
Yeah, so this is a continued project as well. So this project was first heard at the April 2nd Design Review Board meeting, where the board continued the item and required the applicant to come back with more detailed drawings for the project. Since then, the applicant has worked on providing those components and is a part of the package that is in front of you this evening. The project still meets the standards set forth in the zoning ordinance along with the design review guidelines. There were a couple clarifying components. I believe in the staff report, it still mentioned that there was 22 parking spaces on site. There's actually 20 as part of this. There was some reduction in kind of reconfiguring the back portion of the site with the trees that are still there, and then also the bicycle parking facilities on site. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have. And at that further point, the applicant is here as well to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Any questions for staff at this moment?
Yeah.
Gary?
John, at the last meeting, there was a condition that I believe you were going to look into about provide at least a bulb out for one per every 5 stalls, and that would further reduce the parking requirements.
Correct. So that would be, I don't believe the parking would work, and the planning commission would have to grant a parking reduction. Since this is an affordable housing project, it's a permitted project by right. So,
thanks.
Any other questions for staff? Lynn?
Not for staff.
Okay. Any other questions for staff at this point? No? Okay. How about any questions for our applicant? Yeah. Could you come up to the podium, please?
Yeah.
Good evening.
Yeah. Lots of questions. Okay, just first of all, on one of these sheets, the clock, it shows the clock is an oval. Is that intended?
No, I think that was a stretch, an unfortunate stretch that occurred in putting it on the on that sheet size.
Okay, good. Next is, in this picture here, it shows roof pitching back or down toward forward. And other pictures show it as a single line going all the way across.
The roof pitches do, there is a roof pitch toward the street that's over the units, and then the roof pitch that's over the tower goes back toward the center of the
I
property.
think it's the shadow in the rendering that you're seeing.
Yeah, but you look at this view, you look at this view, they don't jibe. So you have both views throughout this.
This thing here is the
Yeah.
shadow in the rendering.
Oh, yeah, that up at the top of the tower, that's there is an eave, and there's a shadow under the eave.
Oh, that is shadow.
Yes.
Okay. And I guess, common sense says these are just errors in the color palette. You have arrows going shows roof shingles, and it directs you toward the tower. The tower directs you
Oops,
toward
I'm sorry.
windows.
Yes.
Okay, error. And those, I wondered what those things were sticking out around all the windows on that page on the sides. It looks like the windows have popped, but those are again shadows.
Yeah, now that is, we are screening the windows. There's a fin next to the windows that have a direct sun. So those will be, so what you see it better in this like street views. You can see them as sort of fins, and that would prevent just direct heat gain from the sun. And it's also, I guess, all the metal bits like those fins and the canopies over the doors. Those are the bright color.
How big are the fins?
How big are the fins? They're not very big. They're going to stick out like 8 inches.
8 inches.
Yeah.
Okay. Significant.
Oh yeah, it will really screen the window.
And they're all the way down the sides?
Of the window, yeah.
Okay. More questions? Back to the tower. So some of your pictures show the tower as about the same depth as the rest of the building. And then some of your floor plans show the tower is just about half that big.
The tower is half that big, but there is the roof that you see coming out as the sort of roof over the gate that turns behind the tower. So it's actually providing shade, both, or not shade, but screening for the door that's back there, but also for the room that's under the tower, which we think will be the mail room.
Okay. And so that picture of the trellis is gone.
Yes.
And there's a fence going across the front.
Yes.
Looks like kind of a no trespassing type of situation there.
Hopefully it's a big gate. It's a big gate, but one of the ideas about this this development is that really the security is at that gate. That there's no community room inside. We're as affordable as we can get. So that courtyard is the social space for the development. We don't want people wandering in. We don't want people wandering through. So there will be that's like the door to your apartment building. And it happens to be outside.
But you don't want an open fence. You want it solid like that.
Probably open to discussion on that. I think our feeling was to try to preserve privacy.
Their outdoor privacy?
Well, That's yes, the outdoor space is the social space for this community. And so if they're having if they're having a, barbecue, if they're having an event, if they're having something that's meant for the people who live there, then we feel like that's their private space. That's one of the reasons why we feel like the quadrangle kind of plan works well. There's no hallways, there's no interior space that isn't given over to units, to actual apartments.
Yeah.
So the place where people could share is that courtyard space, and we are not necessarily saying that visitors can see what's going on in there, unless they're invited in and become part of whatever's going on, and like they would in the interior room of a community room of a building. This is the community space of the building in a way.
Okay, just strikes me as a little bit like a compound, that rather than a place to stay. Most people don't have front yard fences.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, and then on the opposite side, that is a storage unit that instead of an open space at the opposite side from the clock.
Oh, yeah. I think we were again, I'm trying to make sure that we have a controlled entrance from the street for to get into any of these units. Again, we can't lock an outside door. They all have doors to the courtyard. So rather than have lots of ways in and out of the campus, in a way, this is meant to be a controlled entrance. So there is a service gate there, but if you're coming here, you should be coming in the main entrance.
Okay. Then getting into the center area, you've changed that around a little bit, the lawn area.
Yes.
In the center of the courtyard.
Right.
Okay. It looks like you're using a lot of cement, like to make that big oval in there, like that walk that just services two separate benches, for instance. And the corners are particularly large at the opposite side, taking away a lot of lawn and giving you a lot of concrete.
Yeah. Oh, okay. But, we can look at it. I think something that's maybe a little bit, those are like 4-foot walkways. And I think that one thing that's sort of deceiving, you're probably used to looking at apartments that are, 600 square feet, 800 square feet. So you're looking at that 4-foot walkway and it looks really big. But I think what may really be happening is that the units look really small from what you're used to seeing. I mean, they are really small in the sense that they're studios, but they're big studios. That's a 400 square foot studio, so that's a really decent sized studio. It is not a 1-bedroom.
Well, I understand. It just seems like there's an excess of concrete, and
okay.
That where those benches are, I wonder how much traffic and use will be generated across that section there. Yet it's like it's only a few feet. You have two walks kind of serving the same purpose at that location.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
And that's it of questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Yes.
Marshall, you can turn on your microphone there. You can go.
Oh, okay. I like I like this submittal a lot better than the last one, and you did respond to a lot of our concerns. Um, and I like the color on the front of the tower, but you've changed it from a tower to a different kind of element, and it's more integrated, and I like that personally. The solid fence that you were just talking about, I used to not like those a lot, but I have one at my house for my side yard, and I love it. And I appreciate what you're saying about privacy, particularly in a multifamily situation like this. So once they're inside, it's private from the street, but still it's open on the backside where the cars are. So I think it's a nice balance. And then you were asked to, you gave a great response to this little storage room, but you were also asked to look at terminating views through the complex in our last meeting, and you did respond to that. So I want to acknowledge that, okay?
Okay, well, very good.
And-
That actually, I got a real kick out of that.
Yeah, Beaux-Arts design, you know. When I look at the concrete here, I do want to ask the question why one sidewalk to the rear is wider than the other. Is that simply the bicycles, or is there another reason for that?
It was primarily the bicycles, and yeah, it was primarily the bicycles.
Okay, and I like the idea that you have the benches back there by the bikes and the roof over the bikes. I like that a lot, personally. I've had to put bikes into a lot of projects, and it's always a challenge. And it does provide some degree of security. I had one project where people just climbed over the fence, you know, and stole the bikes. So
Yes.
yeah, so that's good. And the fact that you're controlling access to this, now these gates for the cars, that'll be controlling access, but are those going to always be open and closed at certain hours, or are those going to be the kind that open and close as you go through them? The car gate.
I'm not sure what the project sponsor wants to do with that.
Okay, well that isn't going to make or break the project. Don't worry.
Right.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
The central space could be more interesting and developed and unique. You might take a look at that. It seems like there's a bit of wasted space in terms of socializing, but maybe I'm not quite getting what you're going to be doing in the end.
On the street views one, where there's an aerial looking into the courtyard, you can see that we actually have a big live oak in there, and we are also showing a shade structure over where the benches are. So that's again, we're trying to be,
I see. I see. Okay, gotcha. Never mind.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Because that's the only space that these people have to work with in terms of community, sense of community.
Right.
No tailgate parties, right? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Marshall. Carrie, any questions?
Sure. We talked last about reducing possibly the bicycle parking. There's 25. Was that considered, or was it not needed, or was it particularly a design element that you wanted to follow?
You know, I think the idea that there should be room for everybody to have a bicycle was thought to be an important idea. And for sure, these units, if you had a bicycle in there, you wouldn't have room for a kitchen table.
Great. Yeah, appreciate that. Great. I appreciate that. I'm a bicyclist.
Okay.
Question on the landscape plan,
Mhm.
the ground covers. I was curious how you might apply those. Is that fair to ask?
It's fair to ask. I was just busy on my phone trying to get my landscape architect to be available, and his computer crashed. So the idea was that he went through the Sebastopol, recommendations for planting for the trees, and then other plants that would do well in this climate zone. And so the idea is that the ground covers are really more in the planting. You can see them as sort of in the planting areas, understory where the trees are, trees and shrubs, and even in the little front porch things. And that the only place that we're looking at any kind of sort of turf thing is that center space. But everything else would be some brand of ground covers and shrubs and trees.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Melissa, any questions?
I don't have questions. I have comments.
Okay. Christine, any questions?
Got a couple. So this tower, what is the material of that tower?
I think we have it called out as stucco.
So those verticals and horizontals are just scored
Joints.
in joints. Yeah, okay. And then the trellis is now over the front entry. That's a steel? What exactly? How would you describe
Well,
that?
that one is a wood solid roof, and it just really is right there at the gate. I think
This flat horizontal?
Yeah.
The yellow one it's wood, you said? Painted wood?
Yeah. Oh, no, the yellow ones that are over each door to the units, those are metal.
No, I'm talking about that. So before we had a wood.
We had a wood trellis.
Right. And now it's kind of hard for me to determine what exactly this is. So that's why I'm asking.
I think we kind of agreed with you that a wood trellis was going to be toast pretty soon.
Yeah.
And so what we're suggesting is that it's built like a roof. So wood structure, but
what is its dimension going into it?
The dimension going, how deep is it?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
I mean, it kind of comes in front of the tower. Is it like attached to the tower there, or is it sticking out away from the tower?
It's not attached. It kind of.
I mean, what's holding it up then?
What's holding up the cantilever? It probably is. Yes, I'm sorry. It does have to cantilever out of the tower. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So how far away from the tower would you say that goes?
I was looking at the plan, and it's probably about 3 feet. Not in front of the tower. 3 feet in front of the housing behind.
Where does it show a plan view of it? Maybe I'm just missing something.
Well, sort of in the plan, site plan and site drainage, you can see, you can actually see you guys asked me to tell you where there would be a transformer if that happened. So, that.
Right, I see that.
Yeah.
But where does the trellis relate to that?
Yeah, and you can see it on the building elevation, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, thank you, Marshall. That's a good place to see it. Yes. So on the building elevations, below the elevation that shows the front of the tower with the squished clock, if you look below it, you can see the little yellow tab that's coming out, and that's basically only as far out as it's about 3 feet and then another foot out beyond the tower.
You know what? Why don't you just come over here for a second?
So on the north elevation, she was just describing.
Where is the trellis? Is it, like what?
It's right there.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
it does come back here to cover that access to the.
Well, this looks like this is part of the tower.
This
Like
is
you
not.
can walk underneath it because look at
Yeah.
So the tower is only this,
There's a shadow on
this?
the west
that's the
elevation.
actual base of the
Yes.
tower.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the base of the tower. These
Well,
are
where's that
accesses to the
elevation? I
units.
thought I saw that different on the elevation.
See, these pentagrams, the tower is coming from here to here.
That's the roof, yeah.
Also, we're getting kicked out of this room in
but-
7 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, so can I interrupt for a second? So there's a meeting here at 6, correct?
Correct.
That's not our meeting.
Correct.
So that's in 7 minutes.
We have a little bit of flexibility to move it, 10, 15 minutes beyond the 6 o'clock point. So
Okay. So let's, yes, David?
We also have a check-in with your board members regarding reorganization of committees, commissions, and so forth, boards. And we would certainly appreciate getting some feedback from you that we can kind of provide to our city manager. Hopefully there's time to do that. The budget review process is underway, so that's timely. It's kind of urgent.
So the urgency of that is clear, I guess. The urgency of this project in front of us, from my understanding, it wants this approval to try and find more funding to do the project, correct? So it's pretty urgent as well, no?
It is urgent, and I don't want to understate that. I think that John is kind of trying to maneuver here to buy 10 or 15 minutes, and hopefully that would be sufficient. I hope to kind of move this forward.
So Lynn, if you have questions, that's fine, but I think as best we can, let's try and be concise and ask questions that are, in a way going to influence how you see this project going forward.
Yeah. Can I just a suggestion is, we had a planning commission meeting over one building away at their back room, and maybe that's available.
I think in terms of setup for recording and the public, we're here. And so we need to work with this setting.
Yeah.
If you can, it would be terrific to finish this project up. And then I presume you had a chance to read the memo. This isn't new information to you in any case, I don't believe.
Correct.
So if you could provide me feedback on that, I don't want to take away from this application at all, but some quick feedback that I can then pass back to the city manager, I would really appreciate it.
Okay. And I guess, I will say also, we always have deliberations about the project and are we going to approve it or not? So that's one way to think of it. Are your questions helpful to get answers to help your deliberation and decision, or can that be wrapped into one whole discussion? So Lynn, if given that, do you have questions that are, pressing that before we deliberate on the project as a whole, or can you just talk about your feelings of the project with those questions?
I can just start talking about what I think.
Why don't we do that?
Okay. Just looking at the front elevations, I think the tower is about 2 feet too tall proportionally to the size of the buildings next to it. The patterns that are in the siding of the buildings with the vertical and the horizontal, the way they're placed is unusual and not the classic way that siding is used. And it looks awkward because these are kind of very typical classic shapes of buildings with an unusual and not particularly well proportioned siding pattern. I think that needs to be looked at. Let me go on here. I have concerns about the layout, the concrete, and the way the center island is addressed. Another concern is there's the big gaps between each pair of units, and you're going to put heat exchanger down there. But is that going to be covered? Is there any kind of, or is that wide open to public view, those heat exchangers?
I think the heat exchanger, the venting unit is up mounted on the, we recessed the gable end of each of the, this is all above the roof. And so the gable end is recessed. There is space to service them between them. But the unit is actually going to be fully recessed under the roof. So I mean, it was hard for us to draw it, so I think it'll be kind of hard to see it.
Can the public see it
No.
in the final?
They're inside, they're in the middle of the unit. So they're already, 15 feet away from the street, and they're under a roof. And they're up 9 feet.
Okay, it looks wide open from the street view.
It's in the attic space of the unit itself.
It's up above there. It's above a flat part of the roof. It's above the roof.
Right. And there's about a 30-inch gap in there with where you'll see it from the street.
Yeah, so it's hidden under the overhang of the roof, actually in the attic space, so you won't be able to see it.
Okay, you won't see it.
Yeah, no, they're out of the way.
Yeah. Anyway, I think I mentioned radiuses, small radiuses in the walk around the place, and I think that's the way people walk. They cut corners and something like that, and it looks softer rather than squarish, boxy all the way through on your pathways. That's it.
Christine, any comments? Questions?
I can just go ahead and comment.
Okay, great.
So, I mean, these are just the comments. They're not really causing me to deny anything. Okay, so I've never been in love with this tower and this clock, but I thought something that would be epic, which won't happen, would be to have some artistic graphical depiction of one of those beautiful trees that are about the size of this tower that we're removing on that tower. It'd be epic. So I'm not totally in love with these primary colors. I would prefer something more earth toned, which is the bright yellow on the awnings and I just, I'm not totally in love with that, but, and then in regards to the landscaping palette, I just wonder, and this is something, Carrie, I'd like you to chime in on. We've got these trees shown on this very narrow strip between the north side of the building and the adjacent property. And I'm not seeing that the trees would do well there. Would be like some kind of a bush or something that would, maybe could grow 5 or 6 feet tall. And you know what I'm saying? Because there's just not any root space there. And I just don't see a good performance there. But I know that there are things that you could plant, and Carrie, you're much more adept at this than I am, that you could plant in a space like that would do well and thrive. Because I hate to see those spindly street trees that you see all over the place that just never really thrive. And we've had tree removals where they just got too big for their little space that they were in. So, I think we could consider something different, because the reason why I wanted to see this thing without the trees was, yes, we have this long block thing, but given the budget constraints and everything, I don't really know what else you're going to do besides, alter the siding as you've done. But I think some landscaping, some appropriate landscaping that would thrive. And I mean, what do you think, Carrie? What would go? I mean, it's a 5-foot space or not even, and you got to get back there to do any maintenance and stuff. So you have to have some room for that. Like what would go in there realistically?
Yeah, I was going to just suggest maybe just simplifying the palette. I know you're trying to reduce cost and you're trying to make it more manageable, and you wet areas in a much more grand gesture. But yeah, that pittosporum probably do really well as a good.
I was going to say
screen.
that, but I didn't dare.
Yeah, that's
Wait,
actually
you do know something.
That's actually a perfect plant for good screening, and it get really large. And I think these would really have a hard time competing. I mean, it's just fussy. It's like really busy. It's a difficult plan to, I think, execute over time, and you could just super simplify it. So to that point, but I don't want to go ahead.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Carrie, don't you think you could then make up for it on the front? You have a little bit more room in the front. You could have more variety in that on the street elevation, so you could kind of draw the eye that way, and then just take, because that's sort of a dead space on the side there.
Yeah, the landscape plan, if I had to comment on it entirely, it should, the front you really addressed quite well. Those Drake elms along the street frontage, as well as I think you got that little carex popping off of that really kind of darker color. It's a really kind of a bold, it's a bold palette, it's very contrasting. It's very striking. It got simple to the front, but then you shrubbed up the building with these, again, I think you had more pittosporums, and you had, basically you're just going to bury your building. Mm-hmm. And I would hate to sort of see that, a lot of what you put into it, especially articulating the siding conditions and really kind of bringing out those textures, they're just going to get buried in shrub. And it's not also a very good fire compliant idea. So reduce the amount of biomass up against the home and pull that further out instead of making it feel two-dimensional, right? You're just creating a big foundation plan that's just going to shrub up your buildings. To that note, a little bit, if you're coming out of that main driveway, there's a vision triangle there, and those, again, you have those big flags sort of right on that corner. You can't exceed that 2-foot maximum height for safe turning distances. The junipers that are just really right almost under the eaves next to each of those units, those are fire prone as well, and they get really large. So remove those things. Keep it simple. I mean, I would agapanthus. I mean, you can't lose with agapanthus. You could plant the whole dang thing in agapanthus and meet your low water use, and it'd thrive, So the Festuca marii, that's a winner of a ground cover. That's what I was asking. That is a great ground cover. It thrives on air. It's keeping it simple. I would reduce a lot, like you mentioned, that if the more simple you keep it with some punctuations for these more accent trees, like the pistache, winter, you got the Arbutus morinus, which are evergreens, but I'd plant them in mass, and find a rhythm to that, because right now you're just hopscotching and you've got a randomness that's happening that I think would not be easy to wet under them as well. It would hard to establish plants as an understory. Sorry, stop there.
No, Carrie, that's
Well
exactly
said.
what I was waiting for, and I'm in complete agreement with you. I think that sounds really good.
Simplify.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. That's great.
Melissa?
Yeah, so I think simplicity is the name here, and I'm disappointed to hear that you did not take on, or see that you did not take on this board's recommendation about this clock tower. And just for like absolute clarity, I will not vote to approve this project with this clock tower in it. So that's going to be a no vote for me with clock tower. I also think that we're mashing up two styles here that are really internally discordant. We've got this farmhouse thing and this 90s stucco thing. It's just reinforcing the commercial vibe of it, which was a concern I raised last time. The scale of the tower, now the colors, now the materials, it looks like a commercial building. The primary color scheme reads like a school. I think it doesn't quite know what it wants to be when it grows up. So if we're going to make, the bright yellow, the punchy move, cool. Let it be your move. Let it be on a really simple building palette. Just simplify, simplify, simplify. All these metal screens, these are expensive items. Budget is a consideration in this project. Simplify this project. Keep it clean, keep it crisp, simplify.
Thank you. Carrie, did you have any other comments or questions? No. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't I was at the first meeting, but not the second, and I know there was a lot of concern and comments from the board, but I totally agree with the clock tower. It just feels like it's like the one element that's trying to be give some urban scale to the project, but the rest of it is not urban in a very, very urban area. And it just kind of, it's like we're counting on the trees to make this, pleasing thing to look at. It feels like to me, like it's, I understand the constraints of the budget for sure. And we're trying to provide some housing for, affordable housing, very important. But I think that the sort of the one move, the clock tower move, just feels doesn't feel integrated. That's my sort of main comment. I think I agree with the color palettes, like with the primary color doors, the building should be white or black. I mean, may as well go full dish steel or not. Like it's kind of in these two different zones as far as the expression of the building with the color. I think those are my main comments. Yeah, Lynn?
I find the color somewhat feel the colors are somewhat harsh, and I feel that particular color is a little bit depressing. And I don't think the colors blend very well either. And I'd like to make it so that they have time to rethink their colors, but go ahead and improve the project. But and I'd like to include that I concur with Melissa's thoughts on the tower. It is where'd that come from kind of thing. And I hope our approval leaves open a refinement of that particular feature.
All right, thank you, Lynn.
I just want to make one more quick comment. So my understanding is that this is not what you would kind of clarify or classify as affordable housing. It's supportive housing. Am I correct about that? For homeless people to get into something, to make a transition.
Deeply affordable.
Yeah.
I think, so it's deeply affordable. It is, so we do a lot of supportive housing for people who have identified needs. And I would say that it's complicated when you're looking at somebody who's post-homelessness because their biggest identified need might be poverty. And that once you get them into stable housing and the ability to actually go and find work or work around the place, that you actually find out that their major need was poverty and housing. And so the other, so we don't have a lot of, there's not a clinic space, there's not some of the other service spaces that would typically be in a place where you had identified needs. There's, we've done housing that was pointed at. There's a big sort of group of people who go into homelessness who are coming out of the foster care system, and they just got chucked out with a garbage bag full of their worldly goods when they're 18. And again, they may not have the same kinds of medical or other supportive housing needs that other people do. So it's not the way we look at it, it's not a very homogeneous group. And especially in a small town, I don't think you could say that you had a homogeneous group. When we're hoping that, St. Vincent DePaul will be able to deliver services that match folks. And if they're not given at the home, then they're done somewhere else. And one reason we had a long talk about whether we should put the parking in or cut the parking, like what kind of car, do folks have? And I think Jack's feeling was that the first thing you did, once you got stable housing might be to get a car so you could get a job. And so I think the idea is to provide as affordably as we can housing that creates a community of peers who can help each other out and get stable and be able to go out and maybe move out, but they're not going, this is not transitional in the sense that you got a year, shape up or ship out, this is supposed to be, housing. And it is deeply affordable. That's the idea. And is that supportive? Yeah, I mean, I think all homes support people. And, I think the service providers that come in, I'm hoping it's a variety of service providers who can deliver what people need and be really personal to the folks who need it. So that's kind of the approach.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you
taking.
for your comments. They're very appreciated. And I think we all understand the need for housing for everyone, but especially the population you're talking about. So how do we as a board evaluate just a design, right? That the better that design is, the better those people will feel in their house, no matter how big or small or supported or not supported. So that's kind of what's in front of us today. I think none of us would disagree with what you're saying about the sort of the, psychology or philosophy of the plan. So thank you I think we don't have time for more comments, but thank you. And so how do we as a board move forward? Our planning director wants to say something.
A comment here. I'm kind of sensing that there are a lot of suggestions from you, board members, in terms of improving the overall design. And yet to try to take an action at this point with some sort of direction to staff, I think would be difficult given the range of your suggestions. And I think many of them are very useful. I understand that you want to kind of move forward with your project and get it approved and move forward. I'm thinking though, given the range of comments, it would be helpful, perhaps if you're open to it, and again, talking to John and staff, perhaps even a special meeting. It just feels like there's enough information here that you're putting out that the applicant should really kind of work with some of that and come back. But I do realize it's a month out for your next meeting. But is it possible for the staff to work with you as a board and the applicant to have a special meeting sooner and address some of these things? Because I think at this point, it feels unresolved to me, just to be clear.
I have to be honest, I'm disinclined to subject this board to a special meeting. I did make the offer at the last time this project was presented to make myself personally available to the applicant to have a one-on-one and work on some of these issues, and never received any outreach. So I feel like that opportunity has been made available. And I'm not seeing any of the feedback, well, some of the feedback, that's not fair to say not any. The majority of the big issues that we raised last time have not been reflected. So I'd like to see this updated.
You'd like to see the design updated, you're saying?
Yeah, I'd like to see a package that reflects the board's feedback totally, and then come back to this board.
Mm-hmm. And which sort of happened last time, and it didn't get really reflected, right?
Yeah.
So we could have another month, and it looks like this, or the same discussion happened.
Well, I mean, the onus is not on the board to do the work there.
No, that's right.
Again, through the chair, it's a check-in with the applicant, really. I'm wasn't here, of course, that many of your comments perhaps weren't responded to in the way you hoped for. Even the outreach that you suggested didn't occur. I think it's a two-way commitment. I think that, is there a commitment on the part of the applicant to respond? Because for everybody involved, it's time and energy. So you've provided a lot of comment today, a lot of direction, suggestions. Is the applicant willing to take some of this information into account and make some meaningful modifications? Is that feasible? Is that possible?
The biggest issue, I think, is that the funding that the applicant, that the project sponsor was depending on, fell through. So they need something to go forward with so that they can go to, say, the county. There's a very good option there. We're not supposed to be spending a lot of time until, well, I can't get paid for it until they have some money. And so it's a little bit in between. I mean, I hate to, say that kind of conflict, but there's a a sort of conflict between, supposing they find, just as an example, we designed all the units to meet the requirements of the California tax credit funding. So that's called TCAC. So all of these units would meet those minimum requirements. TCAC would also require a 400 square foot community room. If we had TCAC funding, we would have to redesign and put in a community room. And for the funding that we were trying to get, no community room. And so there's like, they go together, sort of the programs and the funding, in a way that it's very hard to say that we would finalize the design at this point and, you know, and not return to it if the funding changed. And so that's a bit of my conflict with it, is just that how much can I refine and solidify the design when the funding is up in the air.
But you just said if some funding requires a different design,
yeah,
needs a community room. So
Right.
even if we approve it, you go to that funder, they'll say, nope, need a community room. So
Right.
that's sort of not, we're betwixt and between, I guess.
We are, and so I think it's a very difficult position, because I think some of the county wanted it something shovel ready. You know, everybody's objecting to, why can't we get affordable housing built? You know, how could an affordable housing project take 10 years, you know? So the idea that you could say, okay, you know, we've already started to sort of make it possible to get this project, you know, shovel ready, done. That was how it was presented to me when it was a 2-story market rate project that was for this lot. And, you know, we had to say, no, we're not going to be able to afford that. We can't build that. This we can build. And I think the question is whether we can convince the various funders that it's shovel ready, and that therefore they can release the funds that would make it happen. So that's, I think, the urgency that you're talking about.
So a suggestion, the board had a number of comments. Is it possible to identify a small number that are meaningful, that the applicant could say, yeah, I think we can do those things? I mean, there were many. I kept hearing about the tower as an example. There are probably others as well. But are there 2 or 3 or some smaller number of, you know, if these changes could be made with some direction, some clarity, so that the applicant has some clear direction and can work on those and come back, and really a commitment on both sides to, you know, work together. Is that a possibility?
I feel like that's what we've already done. So to me, the other option, and maybe this is completely far-fetched, is we approve it with the condition that it comes back to us once the design is actually figured out based on the funding, which maybe one funder will say, we can't have a clock tower. Sorry, we won't fund it unless there's, you know, I'm being, you know, facetious,
Yeah, no.
but I mean, that seems to me we've already given the opportunity to our applicant in a difficult circumstance, I understand, to redesign based on some of these very same suggestions. So what would be, as I said earlier, we could be back here in a month having this exact same discussion, and that's no good use of anyone's time.
I mean, I guess that's the part that's bothering me, is that every funding program I know of comes with specific requirements.
Mm-hmm.
And so the probability of a redesign of at least to some extent, you know, if it's a different funding program, is pretty high. So, I mean, I don't know whether you can approve 22 units of deeply affordable housing in a 1-story building on this site and say that you can, you know, that we'll come back with for another review once the project is funded.
I can kind of interject there. So if their project is approved under this current stance, when it does come back in for a building permit review, which planning would look at, if it's a substantial change, we can bring it back to the board.
You can bring it back
correct.
to the board, but
Yeah.
But that's not, then if it doesn't change, which we don't like,
Correct.
it'll just go forward.
Correct.
So that's what I'm trying to avoid.
Gotcha.
So
Well said.
I think that, again, if there are certain elements to really try to narrow it down that could be changed with commitment that would get your support, that may be a focus, because as you're saying, if you go ahead and approve what is before you today, and they get the funding, they would build it. And are you okay with that? I mean, that's a question. I mean, are you okay with that?
So I have a question for you that, so if you took these drawings out for funding, you may or may not get funding. If you take these drawings out with design review approval, you'll have more chance of funding?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a really big deal
Yeah.
with the agencies that you saved a year,
Right.
is what they say.
They saved a year, did you say?
Yes.
And yet if we condition the project to come back to us, what's the difference?
The bin time, the wait, the way they look at it. I mean, I think we're doing several of these in San Francisco where they basically say that SB 330 and SB 35 for the affordable housing, that's intended to take a full year of regulatory, what they call delay, out of the system.
Mhm.
So what we're saying is, if it's approved as a project and a use for this site, that we certainly can come back for, and it can take another couple of months to work it out. And I'm afraid, Melissa, I guess I didn't hear correctly. I actually heard some people liked the tower and some people didn't like the tower. So I wasn't clear that it was a just get rid of it, which I probably could do. But it's, but I think what's important for us is and for St. Vincent de Paul is to be able to go through with a project where the use is approved and the basic one-story approach is approved, and
so to David's suggestion, if we say, could you come back to us in a month with a redesign with sort of no tower or some different streetscape and a simplified landscape plan? I don't know if there's other things anybody else would put on that list, but are you willing to do that?
Well, I certainly am. Jack's not here, but I certainly am. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The special meeting. So what was the issue with that?
Well, it's just one more meeting that isn't currently on any of our calendars.
Yeah, I also agree. It's hard enough, well, I carve out this day.
Right.
It's Tuesdays.
So we could vote once again to continue till the next meeting with a resubmittal. Right?
Through the chair, yet another option. If you narrow it down and can be very clear and you're comfortable with your direction, say the tower or the pittosporum, what have you, there could be conditions or direction to staff if you're comfortable with this, and that the staff could work with the applicant directly. And I say that with some caution, because I want you to be comfortable with that. So that's yet another option to think about. If you've got 2 or 3 or whatever issues and you feel that you can give some fairly clear direction as conditions for staff, then to work with the applicant to address, that's an option as well.
When would staff work with the applicant? Like in the next month, or once
Yes.
they find their funding and come back with another project?
No, as part of the revised plans that would basically, with those revisions,
Mm-hmm.
those would be the board's approved plans that would go forward.
Right. So as usual, we can deny, we can continue, or we can approve with conditions.
Correct.
Okay. Any feelings on this those, I guess we're trying to get to approve with conditions or continue, right? We'd rather not deny this if we can.
It seems a continuance is more applicable.
I would agree. I think, if it were my building, if I was an architect and I was asked to say, can you and the staff figure out a better solution than this tower, which is a big element in the project, that's a big ask, I would say. So I'm in agreement with you, Carrie. Would someone like to make a motion to that effect? Unless there's more discussion.
Well, I just maybe to provide that specific instruction to the applicant. So it sounds like we're saying no tower, and we want a simplified landscape plan. And Lynn, was I hearing also a simplified color palette or a more uniform color palette? Yeah.
I'm not no tower. I'm just the stucco clashes kind of with the stucco and the yellow just don't belong with the rest of the building.
Perhaps the scale as well.
Yeah.
Simple scale.
There's a scale issue. Yeah.
I think there's a scale issue.
Yeah.
Yes, and the scale.
And then I also mentioned these bright primary
the colors,
Yeah,
are just a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll try to
Right.
craft one here. Yeah, let's do it. I move to.
Vice Chair, before we get to that,
Yes.
Can we please open public comment first? And
Oh,
then, because we didn't have, and then that way on the future meeting, it'll come back just in deliberation.
Okay, right. Okay, any public comment on this project, either in the audience or, yeah, that hand has been raised for hours, I believe, on a different topic, perhaps.
Must be Linda.
Linda, you can go ahead.
I'm appalled. I am just absolutely appalled that you did not take public comment on the previous thing with the canopy. I am a neighbor of both. I live on the corner of Hurlbut and Gravenstein, and I have a lot of valuable information on both canopy project, and I know a lot of the denizens of the Gravenstein project. So anyway, I'm voicing an objection to that last discussion because you, in my opinion, violated my civil rights to participate in the decision making of the canopy project, and I am furthermore, I'm asking that it be redone. Also, I am on Hurlbut every day, just about, on my bike and walking, and I read the sign. That sign was not posted, in what I expect, what I think is 45 days. So the first time I saw the date of this meeting was on the 9th, which is about 20 days ago or so. So I'm also...
Linda, real quick, this is about the 845 Gravenstein project, not the Canopy project.
Well, anyway, you ought to figure out that well, I'm just telling you, I'm formally voicing objections about the process here. But anyway, about that, this other project, you should know that it's already been disapproved by the city council. And what the heck are you voting on the thing that does not have financing and frankly does not have any prospect of getting vouchers for these people, most of whom I know, to pay the rent? And it'll put the partner, whoever they find, on the hook for financial and I tell you, these people
30 seconds.
Anyway, so I'm absolutely opposed to both of these projects, on various bases. But I'm overall voicing a objection to the project, and I want a rehearing of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public people out there want to comment? Seeing none, okay. Back to the board. Melissa, would you like to try and passion a motion?
I'll do my best. I move to continue this project with the understanding that the applicant will revise the submittal to include revisions to the clock tower to either remove or reduce in size and scale, to simplify the finished palette, and to simplify the planting and landscape plans.
And that would be to your next design review board meeting?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? Let's call a vote then, please.
All right. Christine Lovell,
Aye.
Lynn Diedler,
Aye.
Carrie Bush.
Aye.
Vice Chair Henley.
Aye.
And Chair Langberg.
Aye.
All right, so that motion passes 5-0.
Okay, then we had one last item from the planning director. I know there's a whole other meeting waiting out there, and I have dinner plans with my daughter who's going out of town tomorrow. So could we somehow do this another time? Or can we give feedback? Can we give feedback individually to you, the planning director, in the next week or something?
Yes. So a suggestion, you have the memo in your packet. This item has been brought to you before, and it's about reorganizing boards, committees, and commissions as we go through, as the city goes through the budget process and looks for opportunities to save costs, generate revenue, improve processes, et cetera. We've listed here in the memo the feedback that we presented initially to the city manager based on feedback that we received from you. We would appreciate you taking a look at this and then providing to me, if this works for all of you, an email, say over the next week, with your thoughts, and then I'll forward that information on to the city manager in terms of his considerations as far as making a recommendation to the city council on budget. Does that work for all of you?
Yes, I would just ask, could you re-email this as a package, the memo?
Yes.
Your request?
Yes.
So we have a fresh, separate email
Certainly.
coming in. Okay, thanks.
I will do that.
Okay, great. That work for everybody? Yeah? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Okay, great. All right, then we'll adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Recording stopped.